tree count. Time is money. Did you come up with that yourself? No, really? Okay. Hey everybody, Robert here from Robert Made It. Welcome to the shop. Today we are going to do, I'm not even sure what we're shooting today. It's going to be something, it'll be entertaining, hopefully helpful. Oh, yeah, thank you. We're going to be shooting today to tell you how to make an end grain cutting board, what we refer to as the heirloom board. One that will last generations, not going to fall apart on you in 5 years, and there's a whole lot to it, a lot more than just, cutting up pieces of wood and gluing them together. There's a lot of things to take in consideration. Most importantly, that would be wood grain. So we're going to talk about that a bit, and then I'll show you how I do it. And we'll take it from there. So I hope you are entertained. Thank you. Okay, so we had a bit of fun doing a little fast forward motion there, showing you how we go from rough stock that we pick up at the lumber yard, that's obviously not square or flat. We take it to the shop, we get it squared up, flattened off, and then we get it cut down into our strips. So I didn't spend a lot of great time on showing you how I use my tools. Lord knows I have a few bad habits of my own. I don't want to be responsible to pass off on anybody else. That wasn't the objective of this video. The objective of this video was to talk about wood grain and how that pertains to the glue up of an end grain cutting board to make a board that's going to last generations versus one that's only going to serve you 5, maybe 8 or 10 years if you're very lucky. So we're at that stage right now. Now you've seen us get to this point where we cut up our strips, and you can see on the end of the wood there, hopefully you can see that, you see the wood grain. Well, this is where we have to start figuring out what grain we have there. And to talk about what grain we have there, to explain this a little better, I'm going to draw a cross-cut of a log. Now this is not the prettiest log you've ever seen in your life, but there you go. You go in the woods, you cut a tree down, that's the cross-cut you're going to end up with. Now right in here, this is what they call the heartwood in here. The heartwood's a very dense wood, much more dense than the wood around the outside of the tree, which is what we refer to as the sapwood. Little thing here. Okay, that right there in the dead center of the tree is actually called the pith. If you buy wood and get it back to your home or shop or whatever, and you have the pith in it, actually cut that out and throw it away. You don't want to work with it. It will crack. You'll never find the pith in any good quality furniture. So if you have it, throw it out. Usually the lumberyard will cut it out and throw it out to stop it before it gets to you, but if you get it, cut it out, throw it out. So okay, here we go. Now obviously a tree is going to have more growth rings on it than what I'm drawing here, but for reference this will work. Alright, so to identify the one of the three grains you're going to have when you look at the end is dependent on where this piece came out of this tree. There's three basic grains. There's a plain sawn grain, a rift grain, and a quarter sawn grain. And if I show you the differences of those, let's say you've got three pieces of 2x4. And your first piece of 2x4, the grain is pretty much horizontal like so. Well, that's what we call plain sawn grain. Now your next 2x4, if your grain is pretty much up and down, well, that's a quarter sawn grain. And on your next 2x4, if you find the grain is like on a 45-degree angle, that's what we call rift sawn. Now, if you visualize the end of a tree, you can almost picture, you should be able to picture where these pieces of wood come from. For example, the plain sawn is pretty much going to come out of right here, because the grain's pretty much straight across. Whereas the quarter sawn, that 2x4 is going to come out of there, because they're pretty much up and down. And the rift sawn is pretty much going to be coming out of here, out of here, because it's a 45-degree angle. Here, draw that better over here, right there. See, you get your grain on a 45-degree angle. So there's your three different grains. Now what's important, once you establish which of these three you have, what's important is determine on what side of that is the heartwood and what side of that is the sapwood. That's actually very easy. If you think about the growth rings here, they're curved. So, and the heartwood is on the inside of the curve. So this right here on the plain sawn, you see these slight curves here? You know this side of that piece of wood is the heartwood. On the quarter sawn, you see the curves like so. You know this side of that piece of wood is the heartwood side. On the rift sawn, same thing. You look at the curves, you know that this side of that piece of wood is the heartwood side. So now that you establish that, and you know, if you're just starting, you might want to put a little mark, for example, on your wood on the heartwood side, just to indicate so it's easy for you to see. So now you're getting ready to glue up all your pieces like this. You're getting ready to glue them up to make your first stage blank, or your first stage board, if you will. So you lay them out on the table. Let's do it this way here. So you lay out all your blanks on the table. And of course, these are the ends here, right here where you're going to see the grain. What you do not want to do is end up gluing heartwood to sapwood or sapwood to heartwood. You don't want to glue vertical grain to horizontal grain. So here's what you want to do. You want to look at one, and if you see the growth rings are like so, you know the heartwood's on this side. So on this piece, you want to put the heartwood over here so that where the glue joint is sapwood to sapwood. Now on this side, you want to put heartwood to heartwood. On this side over here, it's sapwood to sapwood, heartwood to heartwood, sapwood to sapwood. That's the way you want to do it, because the heartwood and the sapwood are going to expand and contract at two completely different rates. And if you end up gluing them together, there's a much, much greater, I mean, it's exponential, the risk of this glue joint failing. And another huge no-no when you're doing your glue up is you never, ever, ever want to be doing, you know, say you're paying attention to your heartwood to heartwood. Now your grain is vertical here. You never want to suddenly throw in a piece of wood with a horizontal grain. Again, one's expanding this way, one's expanding that way, they're going to tear that glue joint apart. So there's a couple of very important things to consider prior to doing your first stage glue up. And if you don't, you know, you have a board that could last you 5, heck, you might get 8, even 10 years out of it, but it certainly won't be a generation board or an heirloom board, beg your pardon, one that you can pass down through the generations. That I can pretty much guarantee you. Now there are other things to think about as well, other than just what is the sapwood and what is the heartwood. You want to think about the wood species. I mean, before I do any glue up, actually before I cut my first piece of wood, I think about, okay, what species I'm going to use for the board in a particular design. Like if I have a design that calls for contrasting woods, which most designs do, I think about, okay, what is the Janka rating of that wood? Now all wood, for those of you that don't know, has a Janka rating. A Janka rating is a hardness number, if you will, or a density number. Purple Heart, or let's think, what's the hardest one we've got out there right now is Ipe. Ipe is the hardest wood in the world. And I believe the Janka rating on that is like 4,400 or something. I mean, it's off the charts. It's actually way too hard. You'd never want to use it in an end grain cutting board. The perfect Janka rating for an end grain cutting board is anywhere between 500 and 1,600. Below 500 is a bit too soft. Above 1,600, you're getting a bit too hard, and you can start dulling the knives. But if you're using a wood that's a 600 and another wood that's 1,200, you're using woods that are, one that is half as dense as the other. So you have to think about that and how it's going to perform on that glue joint. Whereby if it's twice as dense as the other piece, it's not going to have the same expansion and contraction rate. So you really want to take these things into consideration when you're picking the species you're going to work with, picking the species for a particular design you're trying to make, and really take that into consideration when you're doing your glue ups. If you do that, you'll find you'll have a board that will last the test of time or pass the test of time and not start being a problem and falling apart or warping or cupping on you. I hope that helped.